It was day 6 of my COVID quarantine when everything I thought I knew about my life collapsed. The fever had finally broken that morning, leaving me weak but clear-headed for the first time in days. I was scrolling through emails on my phone when it buzzed with my sister's FaceTime call. Lily and I had always been close. 4 years younger than me, she'd followed her dream of seeing the world by becoming a flight attendant for American Airlines. We spoke at least once a week, though usually not while she was working. "Ethan, are you alone?" Her voice was hushed, urgent. I could see from the background she was in the wingly of a plane. "Yeah, I'm alone." Grace went to the grocery store. I coughed, the remnants of COVID still rattling in my chest. "What's wrong?" "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I think I'm about to show you one." Lily's face was pale, her normally cheerful expression replaced with something I'd never seen before. Fear mixed with pity. "I need to show you something, and I need you to stay calm." My stomach dropped. "What is it?" "I'm working first class on the Chicago to Milan route today." She paused, visibly struggling with what to say next. "Ethan, Grace is on this flight." I laughed, relieved it wasn't something worse. "No, that's impossible." "She's out getting groceries. You must be mistaken." "I wish I was." Lily's voice dropped even lower. "She's in 2A business class with a man. They're very friendly." "Lily, Grace is literally here in Chicago. She just left the house 30 minutes ago. I heard her car pull out of the garage." "Then who's this?" The camera flipped and Lily discreetly angled it toward the cabin. I saw the familiar honey blonde hair first, then the profile I'd woken up next to for 7 years. Grace was leaning toward a man I'd never seen before, laughing at something he'd said, her hand resting intimately on his forearm. She wore the emerald earrings I'd given her for our 5th anniversary. "That's..." My mouth went dry at. "That has to be someone who looks like her." I served her champagne, Ethan. I looked right at her. She didn't recognize me. I was wearing a mask and my hair is different now. "But it's Grace. 100%. I heard the front door open downstairs. "She's home." "That can't be Grace. I'm sending you a photo right now." "Call me back." Lily hung up. I sat frozen on our bed, staring at my phone. Seconds later, a clear image appeared. Grace in the business class seat, champagne flute in hand, the man beside her now with his arm draped casually across her shoulders. Heavy footsteps on the stairs. Our bedroom door opening. "Hey, babe. Feeling better?" There she was. Grace, or someone who looked exactly like her, standing in our doorway with grocery bags. "Where did you go?" I asked, my voice strangely calm despite the hurricane building inside me. "Told you." "Grocery shopping." She lifted the bags as evidence. "Made a quick stop at Starbucks too." Line was crazy. My phone pinged again. Another message from Lily. "Ask the purser. Passenger manifest says Grace Cole. Paid with Amex ending in 4832. That's your joint card, isn't it?" It was. I looked back at the woman in my doorway. She was perfect. The same elegant posture, the same green eyes, the same small scar at her hairline from a childhood accident. But if Grace was on a plane halfway to Europe, who was this? "Everything okay?" Not Grace asked, her head tilting in the exact way my wife's did when she was concerned. "Yeah," I managed. "Just Lily checking in." "How is she? Still flying to all those exotic places?" The woman smiled Grace's smile almost. Something was off, a fraction too wide, a microsecond too long. "She's good." I held up my phone. "Actually taking off for Milan right now." Not a flicker of concern crossed her face. "That sounds amazing. I'm jealous." That's when I knew. Grace would have known her sister was a flight attendant for American, not international routes. She never flew to Milan. "I'm feeling better," I said, swinging my legs off the bed. "Think I'll come down and help you unpack those groceries?" "No need. You should rest." There was the slightest edge to her voice now. "Doctor said full recovery takes time." "I insist." I stood up, watching her carefully. Not Grace hesitated, then shrugged. "Suit yourself." As I followed her downstairs, I sent a quick text to Lily. "Someone who looks exactly like Grace is in our house right now. What the hell is happening?" The woman moved through our kitchen with practiced ease, putting groceries away exactly where Grace would have put them. It was uncanny, unsettling. I sat at the island observing her every move, searching for discrepancies. Coffee? She asked, already reaching for Grace's favorite mug. Sure. She prepared it with 2 sugars and a splash of milk. Strike one. Grace took her coffee black. My phone buzzed again. Lily had sent another photo, this one clearer. Grace and the man were holding hands now, heads close together as they looked at something on his phone. How was the store? I asked casually. Fine. Busy for a Thursday. She pushed the mug toward me. Strike two. It was Wednesday. Did you get that special yogurt I like? I asked, making up a preference I didn't have. Yes, it's in the door of the fridge. She smiled confidently. Strike three. She had no idea what specific yogurt I would want. I sipped the too sweet coffee and studied her. The physical resemblance was beyond uncanny. Well, it was exact. Same height, same build, same mannerisms, but the small mistakes were adding up. This woman knew our house and our lives, but only superficially, like someone working from a script. You know, I said casually, I was thinking about that trip we took last summer to that little town in Minnesota. Oh, that was so fun, she replied instantly. We'd never been to Minnesota. My phone rang again. Lily, I answered it on speaker without thinking. Ethan, they're planning to stay at the Four Seasons in Milan. I overheard them talking about dinner reservations for tomorrow night. The man's name is Daniel, and I lunged to end the call, but it was too late. Not Grace froze, a can of soup hovering halfway to the cupboard. Our eyes met. For a long, tense moment, neither of us moved. Who was that? She asked, her voice unnaturally level. Wrong number, I replied. She set the can down with deliberate care. You answered it on speaker. Force of habit. I shrugged, trying to match her casual tone. When you're sick in bed on, you get lazy with the small stuff. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she nodded and returned to unpacking groceries. The air between us had changed, charged now with awareness. She knew that I knew something was wrong, and I knew she wasn't who she claimed to be. The question was, who would break first? We maintained the charade through dinner, a silent, tense affair with minimal conversation. She'd made soup, claiming it would be good for my recovery. I ate it slowly, wondering if she'd poisoned it, then dismissing the thought as paranoid. After dinner, she announced she was going to take a bath. The moment I heard the water running, I called Lily back. She's still here, I whispered, acting like she's Grace. What the hell is going on? I don't know, but the real Grace is halfway across the Atlantic right now, Lily replied. They're being very affectionate. I'm so sorry, Ethan. Don't apologize. Just tell me everything you can see. She's traveling under her legal name. The man is Daniel Brooks, according to the manifest. Late 40s, expensive watch, designer clothes. They've been drinking champagne since takeoff and keep whispering and laughing. It's intimate. I felt sick and not from COVID. I need to figure out who's in my house. Has Grace ever mentioned a sister? A cousin who looks like her? No, nothing like that. She was an only child. At least, that's what she told me. Lily was silent for a moment. The resemblance would have to be identical. Like a twin. A twin. The word hit me like a physical blow. I have to go, I said suddenly. She'll be out of the bath soon. I need to check something. I hung up and went to our home office. Grace kept a locked file cabinet for important documents. Birth certificates, marriage license, insurance policies. I'd never had reason to look inside before. Now I rummaged through my desk until I found the spare key she thought I didn't know about. The top drawer contained exactly what I expected. Neatly labeled folders with our financial information. The second drawer held real estate documents and warranties for major purchases. The bottom drawer was locked separately. I stared at it for a long moment, then went back to my desk. If Grace had a second key hidden, where would it be? I checked all the usual spots, taped under drawers, behind picture frames, in hollowed-out books. Nothing. Then I remembered. Grace kept a small jewelry box in her nightstand for pieces she didn't wear often. I hurried to our bedroom and opened it. Among the tangled necklaces and forgotten earrings was a single key. Back in the office, I tried the key in the lock. It fit perfectly. Inside the drawer were several folders, labeled in Grace's neat handwriting. One was marked Personal Private. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a birth certificate. Grace Elizabeth Wilson, born in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Parents' names matched what I knew of my wife's family. But there was a second birth certificate as well. Same parents, same date, same hospital. Hannah Louise Wilson. Twins. My mind reeled. 7 years of marriage, and Grace had never once mentioned a twin sister. How was that possible? What else had she hidden from me? Beneath the birth certificates were photographs. 2 identical little girls at various ages, from infancy through high school. In the earlier photos, they were dressed identically, indistinguishable from each other. In the later ones, subtle differences emerged. Different hairstyles, different fashion choices. There were no photos of them as adults. I heard the water draining from the bathtub and quickly replaced everything, locking the drawer and returning the key to the jewelry box. By the time Hannah, it had to be Hannah, emerged from the bathroom wrapped in Grace's favorite robe, I was back in bed, pretending to scroll through my phone. "Feeling any better?" she asked. "A little," I lied. "Think I might turn in early, though." "Good idea. Rest is the best medicine." She smiled, and now that I knew the truth, I could see the differences. Her smile didn't crinkle at the corners the way Grace's did. Her voice was a fraction higher, the way she tied the robe, right side over left, opposite of how Grace always did it. She was good, but not perfect. No one could be. "You know what's funny?" I said, keeping my tone light. "I was just thinking about your family. You don't talk about them much." A flicker of something, tension, wariness, crossed her face before she controlled it. "Not much to tell, you know that." "What about extended family? Cousins? Anyone I haven't met?" She busied herself with arranging items on the dresser. "No one interesting. No siblings hiding away somewhere?" I pushed. Her hands stilled. "Why would you ask that?" "Just making conversation." I shrugged. Fever makes my mind wander. Hannah turned to face me, and for the first time, I saw something genuine in her expression. Fear. "You should get some sleep," she said firmly. "Doctor's orders." "Whose orders?" "I haven't spoken to a doctor." She faltered just for a second. "Figure of speech." "Right." I nodded, watching her closely. "Hannah." She froze. "What did you call me?" "Hannah," I repeated. "That's your name, isn't it? Hannah Louise Wilson, Grace's twin sister." For a moment, she looked like she might deny it. Then her shoulders slumped, and she sank onto the edge of the bed. "How did you know?" "You made mistakes. Small ones. And my sister saw Grace on a plane to Milan with a man named Daniel Brooks." Hannah's eyes widened. "Your sister was on that flight?" "She's a flight attendant. Bad luck for Grace, wouldn't you say?" Hannah looked down at her hands. Grace's hands, but not quite. "She's going to kill me." "Why?" I asked. "Why the charade? Why is my wife flying to Milan with another man while her secret twin sister plays house with me?" "She told me you were sick, really sick, in the hospital with COVID complications." Hannah looked up, her expression pleading. "She said she had this important business trip she couldn't reschedule, but she didn't want you to be alone when you got home. She asked me to stay here, take care of you, just until she got back. And you agreed to pretend to be her, to sleep in our bed, to lie to her husband. She said you'd be too out of it to notice the difference." Hannah's voice cracked. "She said it was just for a few days, and it would be better for you to think she was here taking care of you than to know she had to leave." That's quite a story. I kept my voice even, though rage was building inside me. Except I was never in the hospital. I've been home the whole time with a mild case. Hannah's face went pale. "What? Grace lied to you too." I laughed, a harsh sound that hurt my raw throat. "And now she's in Milan with her boyfriend while her sister keeps her husband distracted. Quite a plan." "No," Hannah shook her head. "That's not, she wouldn't." "Then why is she on that plane? Who is Daniel Brooks? And why has she never once mentioned having a twin sister in 7 years of marriage?" Hannah had no answer. She looked lost, sitting there in my wife's robe, in my bedroom, her entire story unraveling. I think, I said finally, that you should tell me everything you know. And I mean everything. Hannah talked until her voice grew hoarse. The story she told was like something from a bad movie, too bizarre to be anything but true. She and Grace had grown up in Cedar Rapids, identical in appearance, but opposite in temperament. Grace was ambitious, calculating, always looking for an angle, while Hannah was content with a simple life. After their parents died in a car accident when they were 20, Grace moved to Chicago to pursue bigger opportunities. Hannah stayed in Iowa working as a dental hygienist, dating occasionally but never settling down. They'd remained close at first, speaking weekly. Then Grace met me, a successful civil engineer with a growing reputation in sustainable urban infrastructure. According to Hannah, Grace had seen me as her ticket to the upper middle-class life she'd always wanted. She never mentioned me? Hannah asked, looking genuinely hurt. Not once. The betrayal cut deeper with each revelation. She told me she was an only child, that her parents died when she was in college. That part was true, at least. We look so much alike, Hannah whispered. People could never tell us apart unless we wanted them to. So she just erased you? Hannah nodded. After your engagement, she said it was better this way. Simpler. She'd reinvented herself in Chicago, and a secret twin sister didn't fit the narrative. And you accepted that? We still talked. Met up occasionally when she told you she was visiting college friends. I didn't like it, but she trailed off. But she's always been the dominant twin, I finished. Yes. And Daniel Brooks? Who is he? Hannah hesitated. A businessman she met about a year ago. Real estate developer, I think. They've been seeing each other. She's been cheating on me for a year? My chest tightened. I don't know details. She doesn't tell me everything. Hannah looked miserable. She just called me 4 days ago, said you were in the ICU with COVID, and she needed me to cover for her while she went to Milan for an unmissable opportunity with Daniel. What kind of opportunity? Something about a property investment, a villa outside Milan. She said they were going to make a fortune. I reached for my phone. I need to check something. Our joint accounts were accessible through an app. Grace and I had maintained separate accounts for our personal spending, but we shared savings, investment, and household accounts. I hadn't looked at them in weeks. I'd been too busy with a major project before COVID knocked me flat. The main savings account, the one that had held just over $340,000, our nest egg for eventually starting a family and buying a larger home, was empty. Transferred to external account, dated 3 days ago. She took everything, I said, my voice hollow. Hannah's eyes widened. What? The money? All of it. I showed her the screen. Transferred out 3 days ago, right before she left. That's not possible. She wouldn't. Hannah's protest died as she saw my expression. Oh God, I'm so sorry. I continued checking accounts. Our investment portfolio had been liquidated as well. Another $215,000 gone. The household account had just enough left to cover the current month's automatic payments. More than $500,000 vanished. My wife had cleaned me out and fled the country with her lover. And she'd left her identical twin sister to deal with the fallout. I need to call the bank, I said, already dialing. Then the police. Hannah looked panicked. The police? Ethan, wait. She stole over $500,000 from our joint accounts. I cut in. That's grand theft. Wire fraud, I don't even know what else. She'll go to jail. That's the idea. Hannah grabbed my wrist. She's my sister, and she was my wife. I pulled away. She used both of us. Or are you in on this too? No! I swear I thought you were sick, that she was just going on a business trip. I studied her face, so like Grace's, yet somehow more open, more genuine. Either she was telling the truth or she was an even better actress than her sister. Prove it, I said. Help me find her. Hannah hesitated, then nodded. What do you need? Everything you know about Daniel Brooks and any idea where they might go after Milan. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of phone calls, police reports, and devastating revelations. Daniel Brooks was indeed a real estate developer, but his reputation was far from sterling. He'd been investigated twice for investment fraud, though never charged. His specialty was convincing wealthy individuals to invest in exclusive properties that either didn't exist or were wildly overvalued. The bank froze what remained of our accounts but couldn't reverse the transfers. Grace had moved the money through multiple international accounts in rapid succession. A detective assigned to the case told me frankly that recovery was unlikely. Sophisticated operation, he said, reviewing the transaction records. This wasn't impulsive. They've been planning this for months. Hannah remained at the house, sleeping in the guest room. She was cooperating fully, providing photos, email communications with Grace, everything she could think of that might help. She seemed genuinely devastated by her twin's betrayal. I always knew she was selfish, Hannah said that night as we sat in the kitchen reviewing bank statements. But this, I never imagined she could do something like this. 7 years, I said hollowly. 7 years, and I never suspected a thing. Grace was always good at hiding her true self. Hannah looked down at her hands, even from me. My phone rang, Lily again. I put it on speaker. They're landing soon, she reported. I've been keeping an eye on them. They've been cozy the whole flight. Very handsy. I winced. Hannah looked away. What's your plan? Lily asked. Are you going to confront her at the airport? I'm still on COVID isolation, remember? Besides, they're in Milan. I'm in Chicago. I could follow them, Lily suggested. Take pictures, see where they go. No, I said firmly. You've done enough. This is a police matter now. Police, Lily sounded alarmed. Ethan, what's going on? I explained about the money. Lily swore creatively. That bitch, she concluded. And you're sure Hannah isn't involved? Her voice turned suspicious. I'm right here, Hannah said. And no, I didn't know. I wouldn't have helped if I'd known. How can we be sure? Lily demanded. Because Grace cleaned out Hannah's savings account too, I said. $30,000 gone the same day as our money. That had been the final confirmation of Hannah's story. Grace had betrayed everyone who trusted her. Jesus, Lily breathed. Joanna, what are you going to do now? Follow the legal process, file reports, try to track the money. I sounded calmer than I felt. And divorce her, obviously. I might know someone who can help, Lily said after a moment. An old boyfriend works for American Express in their fraud department. Grace used your Amex for the tickets, right? He might be able to get information about other charges, locations. That would be helpful, I admitted, as long as it's all legal. Of course, Lily paused. Landing soon. I'll text you when we arrive. After she hung up, Hannah looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. I should have seen it coming. There were signs. What signs? Last Christmas, she mentioned Daniel for the first time. Said he was a colleague who understood her in ways you never could. Hannah winced. I thought it was just sister talk, complaining about spouses. I never thought she'd actually leave me, steal my money, use her twin sister as a decoy while she ran off with her lover? The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. All of it, Hannah rubbed her eyes. I feel so stupid. Join the club. I stood up, suddenly unable to sit still. I need some air. I went out to the back deck, breathing in the cool night air. Our backyard, my backyard now, I supposed, was small but meticulously landscaped, another of Grace's projects. She'd always been focused on appearances. How much of our marriage had been real? Had she ever loved me? Or had I just been a convenient stepping stone, a source of financial security until something better came along? The sliding door opened behind me. Hannah stepped out, wrapped in one of Grace's cardigans. I made tea, she said, offering me a mug. Thanks. I took it, though I had no interest in drinking anything. We stood in silence for a while, looking out at the dark yard. What will you do now? Hannah finally asked. After all the legal stuff? I don't know. Keep working. Rebuild. I shrugged. What else can I do? I meant about the house. All her things. I hadn't thought that far ahead. Our home was filled with Grace, her clothes, her books, her carefully chosen furniture and artwork. The thought of sorting through it all, deciding what to keep and what to discard, was overwhelming. I have no idea, I admitted. Burn it all, maybe. Hannah didn't laugh. I could help. If you want. I know it would be weird, but everything about this is weird. I looked at her sideways, so like Grace, yet increasingly distinguishable to me. Why would you want to help? Because I feel responsible. She's my twin, my blood. Hannah's voice cracked slightly. And because I think we both need closure. My phone buzzed with a text from Lily. Landed in Milan. They're holding hands going through the terminal. We'll update when I can. I showed Hannah the message. Your sister works fast. She always did. Hannah's voice was sad. Even as kids. If she wanted something, she took it. Consequences were for other people. I studied her in the dim light from the kitchen windows. You're nothing like her, are you? We look the same. That's where the similarities end. She met my gaze. I would never hurt someone the way she hurt you. I believed her. Maybe that made me a fool. I'd believe Grace too. But something in Hannah's eyes spoke to a fundamental decency that Grace had always lacked. You can stay, I said suddenly. Help me sort through this mess, but the guest room, not... I gestured vaguely toward the house, unwilling to say our bedroom. Of course. Hannah nodded. Just until you're back on your feet. Until we figure out what happens next. The next morning, I woke to multiple text messages. Lily, they checked into Four Seasons Milan. Presidential suite. Champagne breakfast. We'll try to get photos. The detective assigned to my case. International warrants take time. Working with Italian authorities. Sit tight. And a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Cole? James Rodriguez, American Express Fraud Department. Your sister-in-law Lily contacted me. Please call when convenient. I called Rodriguez first. He was professional, sympathetic, but not effusive. Your wife's card was just used at Prada in Milan, he informed me. Significant purchase, just under $20,000. Can you decline the charges? Already done. But she has other cards we don't control. I'm sending you a list of all transactions we've flagged in the past 2 weeks. Might help the investigation. The list, when it arrived, was illuminating. Grace had been methodically preparing, shopping at high-end stores, visiting a plastic surgeon's office, purchasing first-class tickets. There were charges at a luxury hotel in Rome dated for the following week. They're heading to Rome next, I told Hannah, showing her the list. Scheduled to check in next Tuesday. Hannah looked thoughtful. Grace always talked about Rome, said it was the most romantic city in the world. Romantic enough to start a new life with stolen money, apparently. I forwarded the information to the detective, then called him to make sure he had received it. Good work, he said. Italian police are coordinating with Interpol. With specific locations, we might be able to intercept them. And the money? He hesitated. Asset recovery is complicated, especially internationally, but this helps build the case. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was better than nothing. I hung up and found Hannah making breakfast in the kitchen, moving with increasing comfort through what had been her sister's domain. Scrambled okay? She asked. It's all I know how to make that's edible. Fine, I sat at the counter watching her. You don't have to cook for me. I know, but I'm eating too, so, she shrugged. Least I can do. We ate in companionable silence. It was strange how quickly we'd fallen into a rhythm. Two people united by betrayal, working toward a common goal. My phone rang again. Lily. They're shopping on Via Monte Napoleone, she reported. Grace just bought a handbag that probably cost more than my car. With my money, I said grimly. I've been taking photos discreetly. They're not even trying to hide. It's like they think they're untouchable. They might be, I admitted. International law enforcement isn't exactly swift. Don't give up, Lily urged. We'll get them. After we hung up, Hannah looked at me with a peculiar expression. What? I asked. I was just thinking. I know where they'll go after Rome. How could you possibly know that? Because I know Grace, and because she told me once, years ago, where she'd go if she ever decided to disappear. Hannah leaned forward. There's a small town on the Amalfi Coast, Priano. She saw it in a magazine once and became obsessed, said it was the perfect place to vanish. You think they're headed there? Eventually, Grace always had escape plans. Even as a kid, she'd map out how she'd run away, where she'd go, how she'd live. Hannah twisted her napkin between her fingers. She used to include me in those plans. Not anymore, I guess. I reached for my phone. I need to tell the detective. Hannah caught my wrist. Wait, I have a better idea. Hannah's plan was simple, elegant, and slightly terrifying. You want to go to Italy? I repeated after she'd explained. And confront them yourself? Not confront, just confirm. Get proof they're together, document what they're doing with the money. Hannah's eyes gleamed with determination. I can get close in a way no one else can. Because you're identical. Exactly. Grace won't suspect me. She thinks I'm here, covering for her. I considered it. The plan had merit, but also significant risks. What about the police? The international warrants? Those will take time. Meanwhile, they're spending your money, maybe planning their next move. Hannah leaned forward. I can find them faster. Get information no one else can get. It's dangerous. Grace isn't dangerous. Selfish, yes. Cruel, absolutely. But she won't hurt me physically. You don't know that, and you don't know this Daniel person at all. Hannah sat back. It's your decision. Your money, your wife. But I want to help make this right. I feel responsible. You shouldn't. You're as much a victim as I am. No. She shook her head firmly. You lost everything. I just lost illusions about my sister that probably should have died years ago. I studied her face, so like Grace's, yet increasingly distinct to my eyes. There was a genuine goodness in Hannah that Grace had never possessed. If, and that's a big if, we did this, I'd go too, I said. Not just you alone. You have COVID. I'm past the contagious stage. Negative test yesterday. I hadn't bothered to mention it with everything else happening. I could travel by the end of the week. You do that? Fly to Italy to confront your thieving wife? To recover my life savings? Yes, I managed a grim smile. Besides, I've always wanted to see the Amalfi Coast. Hannah laughed, a startled, genuine sound. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? From the way Grace described you? A boring workaholic who never wanted adventure. She looked embarrassed. Sorry. No, that's fair. I considered how Grace had seen me. I'm a workaholic, but boring, that hurts. You don't seem boring to me. Hannah's smile was warm. A boring man wouldn't be planning an international heist recovery mission with his wife's secret twin sister. Put that way, my life had certainly taken a turn for the dramatic. Let's do it, I decided. Book the flights. But we do this carefully, legally, evidence gathering only. Then we let the authorities handle the actual arrest. Hannah nodded, looking both excited and nervous. I've never done anything like this. Neither have I. I've found myself smiling despite everything. I guess Grace was wrong about both of us. We spent the next 2 days preparing. Hannah contacted the dental office where she worked, requesting emergency family leave. I spoke with my firm, explaining I needed additional time off due to unforeseen family circumstances related to my COVID recovery. No one questioned it. I had years of accumulated vacation time I'd never used. Lily continued providing updates from Milan. Grace and Daniel, they had checked out of the Four Seasons and taken a train to Rome, exactly as predicted by the credit card trail. They were spending lavishly. Designer clothes, Michelin-starred restaurants, private tours. They don't act like people on the run, Lily reported during our last call before she had to fly back to the U.S. More like honeymooners without a care in the world. They think they've gotten away with it, I said. That's good for us. They won't be looking over their shoulders. The detective assigned to our case was skeptical of our plan, but couldn't stop us from traveling as private citizens. He provided contact information for the Italian police departments in Rome and along the Amalfi Coast, just in case. Don't confront them, he warned. Observe only. Document. Build the case. That's the plan, I assured him. Hannah and I booked flights to Rome, departing Friday morning. I insisted on buying her ticket. It seemed only fair, given that she was risking so much to help me. I can afford my own airfare, she protested. Consider it an investment in recovering my savings, I countered. Besides, Grace emptied your account too, remember? She couldn't argue with that. The night before our departure, we sat in my living room reviewing our plan. Hannah had created a detailed itinerary based on what we knew of Grace and Daniel's movements. They'll be in Rome until Tuesday, she said, checking the credit card logs Rodriguez had provided. Then likely heading south, based on their rental car reservation. Toward Priano. Exactly. Hannah traced the route on a map she'd printed. They'll have to drive through Naples, then along the coast road. It's stunning but slow. Lots of places we could intercept them. I watched her work, impressed by her thoroughness. You're good at this. She looked up, surprised. At what? Planning. Details. You're methodical. Dental hygiene training. She smiled. You learn to be precise or people's teeth fall out. Grace never mentioned that you're a dental hygienist. Grace never mentioned me at all, Hannah reminded me. So I'm not surprised she left out my fascinating career cleaning plaque. There was no bitterness in her tone, just a matter-of-fact acceptance that her twin had erased her from the narrative. If you don't mind me asking, I said carefully, why did you stay in touch with her? After she cut you out of her life like that? Hannah was quiet for a long moment, considering the question. She's my twin, she said finally. My only family. And growing up, she was my protector too. When kids were mean to me, Grace fought my battles. When I was scared, she was brave for both of us. She sighed. I kept hoping that person was still in there somewhere. And now? Now I know better. Her expression hardened. The sister I loved died a long time ago. I just didn't want to admit it. I understood that feeling all too well. Rome was unseasonably warm for October, the city teeming with tourists enjoying the extended summer. Hannah and I checked into a small hotel in Trastevere, far from the luxury establishments where Grace and Daniel were likely to be. 2 rooms, I'd specified when booking, uncomfortable with even the appearance of impropriety. Hannah had nodded in agreement, though neither of us had verbalized the awkwardness of our arrangement. Me traveling with my wife's identical twin sister on what amounted to a sting operation. What now? Hannah asked as we settled into the hotel. Should we start looking for them? First, we rest. Jet lag is real. I checked my watch. It's nearly midnight back home. Let's get some sleep, then start fresh in the morning. Hannah nodded, suppressing a yawn. Good plan. I'm dead on my feet. We parted in the hallway between our adjacent rooms, the moment oddly formal. Good night, Hannah. Good night, Ethan. She hesitated. Thank you for trusting me. I know it can't be easy. You're here helping me track down your sister and her lover. I think trust goes both ways. She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes in a way Grace's rarely had, and disappeared into her room. I lay awake for hours listening to the sounds of Rome filtering through the partially open window. Distant conversations, the occasional scooter, laughter from a nearby restaurant. My life had become unrecognizable in the span of a week. My marriage was over, my savings were gone. I was in Italy with my wife's secret twin sister, hunting the woman who had betrayed us both. Somehow I'd find a way through this mess. I had to. We began our search the next morning with a list of luxury hotels where Grace and Daniel might be staying. The Four Seasons and Hotel de Rossi were at the top based on their spending patterns. How do we do this? Hannah asked as we approached the first hotel. We can't just ask at reception. No, I agreed, but we can have breakfast in the hotel restaurant and watch for them. It was a tedious process. We spent hours lingering in lobbies and restaurants of 5-star hotels, nursing overpriced coffees, watching for any sign of Grace or Daniel. By mid-afternoon, I was beginning to think we'd made a mistake. Rome was enormous. They could be anywhere. Let's think like Grace, Hannah suggested as we took a break in a small cafe near the Spanish Steps. Where would she go? What would she want to see? Shopping, I said immediately. Designer stores. She'd want to play the part of the wealthy tourist. Via Condotti, Hannah nodded, and she always talked about seeing the Vatican museums. We split up. Hannah to patrol the luxury shopping district, me to check the Vatican. We agreed to meet back at our hotel by 6, regardless of what we found. 3 hours later, I was about to give up when my phone buzzed with a text from Hannah. Found them. Via Condotti, outside Gucci. Coming your way. I hurried back toward the shopping district, heart pounding. Hannah sent regular updates. They're window shopping. Now they're getting gelato, heading toward Piazza di Spagna. I spotted Hannah first, partially hidden behind a newspaper at a cafe table. She lowered it slightly as I approached, nodding toward a couple seated at a fountain. And there they were. Grace looked radiant, glowing with happiness as she leaned against Daniel's shoulder. She wore a white sundress I'd never seen before, expensive sunglasses pushed up onto her head. Daniel was tall, distinguished looking, with silver temples and a confident posture. They looked like what they were pretending to be, wealthy, carefree tourists enjoying a romantic getaway. Bile rose in my throat. That was my money they were spending, my life they were enjoying. Hannah's hand closed around my wrist. "Don't," she whispered. "Remember the plan." I realized I'd been moving toward them unconsciously. I forced myself to sit beside her, turning my back to the fountain. "What have they been doing?" I asked, my voice tight. "Shopping. She's bought half of Via Quindoti, it seems." Hannah's expression was grim. "They're very affectionate." "I can see that." I didn't turn around. "Have you taken photos?" She nodded, showing me her phone. Dozens of discreet shots documented Grace and Daniel's afternoon, entering stores, dining at a cafe, examining jewelry in a store window. In every image they were touching, holding hands, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. "They look happy," I said flatly. "They look like thieves enjoying their spoils," Hannah corrected. "Don't torture yourself." Too late for that. "What's the next step?" "Follow them back to their hotel, see if they discuss their plans?" I nodded, still not trusting myself to look at them directly. "You should do the following." "I'm too recognizable." "Agreed, I'll text you updates." Hannah squeezed my arm. "We're going to get through this, Ethan." For the first time since this nightmare began, I believed her. Hannah followed Grace and Daniel back to their hotel, the St. Regis as it turned out, even more exclusive than we'd guessed. She texted regular updates as she maintained surveillance from the hotel bar. "They're having dinner in the restaurant. Very cozy. Grace just ordered the €200 tasting menu." I remained in our modest hotel, coordinating with the detective back in Chicago and updating the Italian police contact he'd provided. The evidence was mounting. Photos, credit card records, hotel confirmations. "We need to know their next destination," the Italian officer told me on the phone. "Specific hotel if possible. Then we can coordinate with local authorities for an arrest." Hannah continued her stakeout until nearly midnight, finally returning to our hotel, exhausted but triumphant. "They're leaving for the Amalfi Coast on Tuesday," she reported, collapsing into a chair in my room. "I overheard them at dinner. They have a villa rented in Priano," I was right, "for the next month. After that, they're considering buying property there." "With my money," I said bitterly. "With our money," she corrected, "but not for long." The next day we rented a car and drove south, ahead of Grace and Daniel. The plan was to reach the Amalfi Coast before them, scope out the villa they'd rented, and coordinate with local police for their arrest when they arrived. The drive was stunning, winding coastal roads with breathtaking views of the Mediterranean. Under different circumstances, it would have been a dream vacation. "Have you ever been to Italy before?" Hannah asked as we navigated the narrow roads. "No, Grace and I talked about it, but never made concrete plans." I kept my eyes on the road. "You?" "Never left the U.S. until now." She gazed out at the sea. "It's beautiful." "Yes," I glanced at her profile, so like Grace's, yet increasingly distinct to me. Grace would have hated this drive. Too winding, makes her car sick. Hannah smiled. "Me too, actually, but I took Dramamine. Twins, but not identical in every way," I observed. "No, just the ways that matter for this operation." We found Priano easily enough, a picturesque village clinging to the cliffside, less touristy than nearby Positano or Amalfi. The villa wasn't hard to locate either. There weren't many luxury rentals in the small town, and Grace had used my Amex to reserve it under her real name. "Not exactly traveling incognito," I remarked as we observed the property from a discreet distance. "She doesn't think she needs to," Hannah replied. "She thinks she's untouchable." We checked into a small hotel nearby and contacted the local carabinieri. They were surprisingly responsive, having already been alerted by their counterparts in Rome. We will be ready when they arrive, the senior officer assured us, but we need you to confirm their presence before we move in. The waiting was excruciating. We spent Sunday and Monday exploring the area. Always keeping an eye on the villa. By Tuesday morning, we were positioned along the coastal road, watching for their arrival. They came just after noon, Grace and Daniel in a rented Alfa Romeo convertible, looking like something from a tourism advertisement. We followed at a distance as they wound their way through the village to the villa. It's them, I confirmed to the carabinieri by phone. They've just arrived at the property. Stay back, the officer warned. We are en route. Hannah and I watched from our rental car as Grace and Daniel unloaded luggage, laughing and stealing kisses between trips. They looked so normal, so happy, as if they weren't standing on the foundation of destroyed lives and stolen money. 3 police cars arrived 20 minutes later, officers approaching the villa with practiced efficiency. Hannah and I remained in our car as instructed, but we could see everything unfold from our vantage point. Grace's face when she realized what was happening was something I'll never forget. Shock giving way to disbelief, then rage. She spotted our car as she was being led to the police vehicle, her eyes locking with mine across the distance. For a moment, she looked confused. Then her gaze shifted to Hannah beside me, and understanding dawned. The betrayer betrayed. The legal process was predictably complex. Grace and Daniel were charged with multiple financial crimes in both the U.S. and Italy. Most of the money was recovered. They'd moved quickly but not carefully enough, leaving a trail that international financial investigators could follow. I filed for divorce immediately upon returning to the States. Grace didn't contest it. She had bigger problems, facing years in prison if convicted on all counts. Hannah returned to Iowa to her job and her life. We kept in touch, bound by the strange experience we'd shared. We weren't friends exactly, but something more complicated. 2 people who'd survived the same storm. 6 months after the arrest, as the case worked its way through the courts, Hannah called me out of the blue. Grace wants to see me, she said without preamble. Are you going to go? She was quiet for a moment. I think I have to. For closure, if nothing else. Do you want me to come with you? The offer surprised even me. Another pause. Would you? That's how I found myself in a prison visiting room, watching as Hannah faced her twin for the first time since the arrest. I stayed back, giving them privacy but close enough to intervene if needed. Grace looked diminished somehow, her designer clothes replaced by a prison jumpsuit, her carefully highlighted hair grown out to show dark roots. But her eyes were the same, calculating, always looking for an angle. They talked for nearly an hour. I couldn't hear what was said, but I could see the emotions play across Hannah's face. Grief, anger, resolution. When they finally embraced goodbye, I caught a glimpse of Grace's expression over Hannah's shoulder. For just a moment, she looked genuinely regretful. How was it? I asked as Hannah rejoined me. Hard. She wiped away a tear. She apologized, if you can believe it. Do you? The apology? Yes. That she means it? I don't know, Hannah shook her head. She's always been good at saying what people want to hear. We walked outside in silence, the spring sun warm on our faces. What did she say about me? I finally asked. That she's sorry for what she did to you. That she never deserved you. Hannah glanced at me. That you and I would make a better couple than you and she ever did. I stopped walking. She said what? Classic Grace. Always trying to control the narrative, even from jail. Hannah's smile was sad. She thinks she's giving us her blessing. Like we needed it. That's, I couldn't find the words, presumptuous. To say the least. Hannah resumed walking. For what it's worth, I told her we're not together. That we're just 2 people who happen to be betrayed by the same person. Is that what we are? Hannah looked at me thoughtfully. I don't know, Ethan. What are we? I didn't have an answer then. But 6 months later, when Hannah called to say she was considering a job offer in Chicago, I found myself offering my guest room until you find a place of your own. She stayed for 3 weeks, then found an apartment 15 minutes from my house. We had dinner together twice that week, just as friends, then 3 times the next week. When I kissed her for the first time on her doorstep after a movie night, It felt like the most natural thing in the world. Is this too weird? She whispered against my lips. Me being her twin? You're nothing like her, I replied. You never were. Grace was sentenced to 7 years for fraud and grand theft. Daniel got 10. I heard through Hannah that Grace had finally admitted everything, how she'd targeted me from the beginning for my financial stability, how she'd met Daniel at a conference and begun plotting with him within weeks, how she'd used Hannah as a pawn in her escape plan. She's still manipulating even now, Hannah told me after another prison visit, trying to present herself as reformed, remorseful, the perfect prisoner. Do you believe her? About being reformed? No, Hannah's expression was firm, but I believe she regrets getting caught. A year after the arrest, with the divorce finalized and most of my money recovered, I proposed to Hannah during a weekend trip to Michigan. Not at a fancy restaurant or scenic overlook, but in a quiet moment on the porch of our rented cabin, watching the sunset over the lake. Are you sure? She asked, even as tears filled her eyes. People will talk. They'll say you couldn't tell the difference between them, that you just substituted one twin for another. Let them talk, I said. We know the truth. The truth was simple. Hannah and Grace might have shared identical DNA, but they were fundamentally different souls. Where Grace had been calculating, Hannah was genuine. Where Grace had seen me as a means to an end, Hannah saw me as a partner. We were married in a small ceremony the following spring. Lily was my best woman. Hannah's dental office colleagues filled the bride's side. No one mentioned the absent twin, though her shadow lingered at the edges of our happiness. Do you ever think about her? Hannah asked on our honeymoon in Scotland, as far from the Amalfi Coast as we could imagine. Less and less, I admitted. You? She writes me letters sometimes. I don't always read them. Hannah looked out at the misty highlands. I used to think we were two halves of the same person. Now I know better. What are you? She turned to me, her face, so like Grace's but so completely her own, illuminated by the soft light. We're strangers who happen to have the same face, she said simply. Nothing more. Grace will be eligible for parole in 3 years. Hannah and I don't talk about what we'll do when that day comes. Some bridges can't be rebuilt once they burn to ash. But I know this, the woman who betrayed me, who stole my money and tried to steal my future, gave me an unexpected gift in the process. She led me to Hannah, not as a replacement, but as the person I was always meant to find. Sometimes the most devastating betrayals lead to the most unexpected blessings. That doesn't excuse what Grace did, but it helps me make peace with it.